Salahudinov. I am a program officer in the OSCE International Secretariat here in Copenhagen. And today I'll have a pleasure to assist our special representative on youth engagement, Ms. Farah Karimi, in moderating this event. Dear members, Madam President, we are very pleased to welcome you at our event today. As you probably know, our meeting will be focused on the topic of youth contribution to strengthening of rule of law, democracy, and human rights in the OSCE area. And before passing the floor for welcoming and opening remarks to Madam President and Madam Karimi, a few traditional technicalities of how we will run our meeting today. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and also broadcasted live from OSCE social media platforms. I also will kindly ask all participants here to mute their microphones when not speaking, and also unmute your microphones only when you speak. Please also note that requests to take the floor during the open debate can be done through the chat function of Zoom. So please feel free to indicate it in the chat and we will add you to the list of speakers accordingly. And without further ado, I would like to pass the virtual floor to our president, Madame Sederfeld, for her welcoming remarks. Madam President, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moncello Sardina. Dear parliamentarians, dear colleagues, dear participants, and dear Madam Special Representative on Youth Engagement, Ms. Farah Karimi. And thank you very much to all our guests today for joining this web dialogue. I am glad to have the opportunity to address this very important event on youth contribution in our societies. I would like to congratulate Special Representative on Youth Engagement, Ms. Farah Karimi, for the pioneering work undertaken together with our youngest colleagues and the fruitful discussions that already take place. I am glad to hear about the establishment of the informal network of young parliamentarians and hope that this initiative will help us to make sure that we successfully engage with youth and for youth, and that the voice of young people are heard in our assembly. I'm looking forward to working closely with this network in the future. More than 40% of the population in the OSCE region is under the age of 30. This represents an important part of the global society whose opinions and visions should be taken into consideration. I am aware of the work of many national parliaments discussing the issue of youth participation, implementing new policies to better integrate young people. However, we should also consider the existing disparities between youth contribution and the powers in place, as well as the lack of recognition of the value young people can add to democracy. We have seen a huge interest among young members inside the OSCE area to support and safeguard youth rights. Also within the call for action, Helsinki Plus 50 process aiming to shape the vision of the OSCE for the future. Now we are looking forward to actions, to changes where changes are needed. Let's focus on what we can achieve as members of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly to enhance the recognition of youth participation, to strengthen rule of law, democracy, and human rights in the OSCE region. It would be a fantastic step forward if OSCE PA can take the lead in including youth contribution in politics and decision making. As parliamentarians, do we have this possibility? If we dare to accept the challenges, and I'm sure we are. Today's Web Dialogue is an important step forward, and I wish Special Representative on Youth Engagement, Ms. Farah Karimi, all the best and success with her engagement. I do particularly welcome the young MPs who attend the webinar and work together with Farah Karimi. Your participation in the OSCE PA as young MPs are highly appreciated, and your perspectives in the debates are of the same importance as others. Sometimes is our perspectives and visions similar, and sometimes it differs between young and elderly. I must admit that MPs, regardless of age, is not a homogenic group and shouldn't be. No society can afford to exclude a huge part of its population from influence. Inclusiveness of young people in politics is crucial for an inclusive society and a broader perspective on today's challenges and solutions. And of course, for the solutions on and also decisions for a better future. And I thank you all for attending today's meeting, and I look forward to follow the coming discussions today. And thank you all, and the best wishes for today's webinar and the future of the OSCE PA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for your encouraging words and also the big support that you are giving to this initiative. Now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Farah Karimi, our Special Representative on Youth Engagement. Dear Farah, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam President. That's really encouraging to listen to your words. Madam President, dear Ms. Maria Raczynska, Ms. Inka Hopsu, dear Mr. Simon Lindkar, dear Ms. Alona Shukrom, and dear participants. Thank you all very much for participating in today's web dialogue on youth contribution to the rule of law and strengthening the rule of law, democracy, and human rights in the OSCE area. Last August, I had the honor of being appointed as the OSCE PA's Special Representative on Youth Engagement. In that capacity, I am delighted that this webinar is taking place, given the grave importance of the topic in this particular period of time. Today, the world faces multiple great challenges: climate change, growing economic inequalities, and authoritarianism shift the global political power relations and threaten human lives and livelihoods all around the globe. Even within the OSCE region, we witness growing political tensions, the shrinking of the democratic space, and violations of human rights. At the same time, the world has the largest youth population that it has ever seen. In some countries within the OSCE area, over 50% of the population is youth. Therefore, the contribution of these younger generations is essential in solving our global challenges. Young people embody our future, and therefore they carry the promise of perpetuating and improving the realization of our shared ideals and principles, such as the rule of law, human rights, and democracy. That's why it is crucial that young people are provided with the opportunity to live up to this promise by involvement in decision-making processes and policy development. Young people, however, are regularly confronted with obstacles, including age-based discrimination, structural and legislative barriers, prejudices, and a lack of political will or opportunities. These obstacles and barriers undermine the aspiration of young people to play a key role in promoting the rule of law principles, of active civic engagement, accountability, and justice. This is why we need more forcefully integrate youth perspectives also in the work of OSCE PA. In order to stimulate this, and Madam President already referred to it, we initiated the informal network of young parliamentarians as a platform for discussion. The first meeting of this network took place last December, and the first in-person meeting will take place in Vienna in March. Hereby, I kindly invite all young parliamentarians who have not yet joined this network to become a member of this network of young parliamentarians and participate in our discussions. Regarding today's discussion and building on my earlier comments on youth and the challenges in our societies, I share with you three central questions to guide our dialogue. First, how can young people contribute to the strengthening of human rights and democratic institutions? And what are the major obstacles for them? Second, how can young people's participation in inclusive political processes and democratic practices be supported? And finally, what is the role of parliamentarians in promoting the role of young people in decision-making processes and strengthening of democratic institutions, and how national parliamentarians can work with youth and youth organizations on these topics? Hopefully, these questions will lead us to fruitful and intriguing conversation. Furthermore, I am very glad to welcome 4 experts today who are all willing to share their perspectives on this issue of youth and the rule of law. Ms. Maria Rachinska, she is the special representative of OSCE chairperson in office on youth and security. Ms. Inka Hopsu, member of the OSCE PA delegation of Finland. Mr. Simon Lindka, board member of the European Youth Forum, and Ms. Alona Shokrom, member of the Parliament of Ukraine. Thank you all very much for attending today's meeting and your willingness to share your insights with us. After the short presentation of our experts, an open debate will take place. I warmly encourage all participants to engage in this debate. I'm really looking forward to your contributions, and I wish you all an inspiring and motivating sessions. Thank you all once again, and I pass the floor back to you, dear Manager.
Thank you very much, Farah. Dear colleagues, if you would like to sign up for the debate, you can do it through the chat. And without further ado, maybe we can move to our great panel of guest speakers we have today. Farah already briefly introduced them. And we will start first with Ms. Maria Rachinska. She's a newly appointed special representative of the chairperson in office on youth and security. Maria currently works in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Poland, and for several years she has been actively working in connecting with multiple youth organizations in the field of political participation and social sciences. We are very glad that Polish chairpersonship decided to continue this great tradition of appointing special representatives on youth and security, which I believe is a great sign how important these topics are in the organization and that young people are very high on the agenda. So without further ado, Ms. Rachinska, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. Great. Thank you very much, Madam President, Madam Karimi, for organizing this webinar and for the opportunity to meet with you all and to talk to you. I believe the issue of youth participation in public life is crucial for the empowerment of youth. And we have to definitely give a voice to the youth so they could be heard. Especially that the world nowadays is changing faster and faster. So the life of youth nowadays is very different than it used to be 10, 20, mentioning 60, 70 years ago. So actually to understand the problems of youth, we have to hear them. And this is why here I would like to emphasize very strong that, that I, as a special representative, I am here to listen to you, to hear your voice, to raise topics. So if any one of you would like to discuss something or share an idea, then please feel free always to text me via social media, Facebook, Twitter. I'm always there to listen and to maybe help anyone just made their idea be heard. But hearing youth is the first step. The second step is youth participation. So how can young people actually contribute to strengthening human rights and democracy? I believe the biggest advantage of young people is their drive to actually do concrete things, their energy. The experience of the older generations and their attitude to discuss things, to give wise opinions is very crucial and important. And I believe it is even sometimes important to make sure that young people don't do something too rapidly. But we should use the energy of young people to sometimes maybe push things forward to actually make things done, driven to the end. Youth also better understands the reality of modern world that is actually moving really fast. They need to communicate in a condensed way, in a way I would say in a youthful language, cool, drawing attention. There are two main ways I know for the youth to contribute in public life, and one is activity in NGOs. Sorry. And this allows young people to do projects they find appealing and important and do it in the ways that suits them. And there are, again, two ways to do it. One is starting from zero, from scratch, actually being young. And here a huge role is for state institutions to help with it. In my country, in Poland, there are foundings for NGOs, also for purpose of maintaining the basics, like even renting an office. So you can have only an idea and energy, and you can start with an NGO. And I hope such possibilities will be open in all the countries, everywhere. But there is an obstacle here, another one, and that in the field of human rights and strengthening democracy, you usually need a network to do projects, to prepare conferences. For most things you do, you need some guests, you need often bigger institutions with bigger foundings to cooperate. And this is difficult for young people who just enter into the field of professional work. So to me, even a better way for young people to participate is their integration, incorporating them into institutions already established. So they could have some guidance, some structure, but also a space to do things on their own. And there are, again, some obstacles to overcome. For example, quite natural one to me, and understandable that sometimes people who worked hard through their life to gain that network and experience don't really want to give it away for free to young people. But here we have to show that it is a transaction, that young people also have a lot to share and instead. So everyone actually gains from the exchange of advantages that all the generations have. The other way to participate for young people is in consultative bodies. And it is again crucial that such exist in member states. In Poland, there is a number of them. Maybe I won't list all of them right now. If someone would be interested, then I can say a couple words about this. And also, young people, of course, can be involved in election processes, being in commission members or observers to make sure that democratic rules are followed. And of course, they can also candidate in elections. We have a number of examples here as young parliamentarians, but also even on a smaller scale, being even younger. I personally have a friend who became a member of Warsaw Region Council, a district council, being 19. So you can start quite early, especially when starting from the smaller scale and then get experience. Thank you very much. I will give the floor back to Manusher.
Thank you very much, dear Maria. We were also very glad to hear that Polish chairpersonship decided also to prioritize youth as one of main priorities in all dimensions. So we're looking forward to continue working with you. We'll now proceed to our second speaker, Ms. Inka Hopsu. She's our own member of PA from Finland. You know, Finland is one of the pioneers of the work in youth, peace and security agenda. In 2019, Finland started the development process of the National Action Plan on Youth, Peace and Security. And last year, they adopted it in accordance to the UN Security Council Resolution 2250. So I believe everyone is very interested in this process and to hear the internal insights from Finnish legislative chamber about this process. So Ms. Hopsu, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and Madam President, distinguished guests, and dear friends. It's a big honor to be here, and I truly think that this webinar is important for all of us. My intervention will be twofold. First, I will raise some points on the importance of involving young people in decision making and policy planning to strengthen the rule of law, democracy, and human rights. And secondly, I will share with you the Finland's experience in implementing the UN Security Council Resolution 2250 on youth, peace, and security. I hope to be able to inspire you to act in your home countries for better inclusiveness and involvement of young people. Last year, I presented my report, Strengthening the Role of Young People in the Prevention and Resolution of Conflicts, at the Parliament Assembly to the Council of Europe. I'm also a member of that delegation from the Finnish Parliament. Several of its conclusions can be used in the context of rule of law, democracy, and human rights, as the respect for these fundamental values are crucial to maintaining stability and preventing conflicts. However, the potential and contribution of young people have received little or no attention and support. All too often, young people are seen as political objects rather than subjects. They are referred to youth organizations where they can discuss youth matters among themselves without any real opportunities for meaningful involvement in political processes. Yet all decisions made today have an impact on their lives tomorrow. Let me specifically mention climate change as its effects will impact severely severely on future generations. By turning our back to young people's rights to have a say about their future on this planet, we turn our back on their human rights to healthy and sustainable environment. I urge us to create conditions and set up structures that utilize the full potential of young people. They need the right spaces and forums to be seen as co-creators rather than consultants. Young people should be actively involved in all political processes and decision-making that affects them on their future as well. Such efforts could include, but not be limited to, increasing the amount of young people on voters' lists, considering lowering age limits for elections and electability, as well as introducing quotas where they are deemed necessary. We should also become more coherent in our policy making and analyze the consequences of decisions in one policy field, another policy field. Madam President, dear Chair, dear colleagues, these ideas are not new. Finnish youth activists have advocated for increased youth involvement for a long time. In fact, these young Finns were among the drivers of the adoption of in 2015 of the UN Security Council Resolution 2250 on youth, peace and security. The resolution generated a normative shift of how young people are recognized in the international peace and security platform. It identifies 5 pillars of action: participation, protection, prevention, partnerships, and disengagement and reintegration. The resolution has since been followed by UN Security Council Resolutions 2419 and 2535 that collectively offer a blueprint for meaningful youth engagement in youth-inclusive peace processes. The resolution 2250 was immediately embraced in different youth forums at the global and European levels. But 6 years later, or even 7 almost, little progress has been made, and young peace builders find that their space for action is diminishing rather than growing. My home country, Finland, is currently the only exception to this inaction. Inclusiveness, peace building, and conflict resolution is one of Finland's foreign policy priorities. For decades, we have been strong actors in implementing UN Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. So for the resolution 2250, we decided to take the leading role as well. We started preparations for the National Action Plan already in 2018, and the following year it was added as an objective in the government program. For Finland, the guiding principle for the action plan's drafting process was youth ownership and involvement. A 2250 network was established to allow youth organizations and young people to contribute to this process. And I think they had a leading role as well. In spring 2020, our foreign ministry organized several thematical virtual workshops in cooperation with youth organizations with the aim to draw up the text of the action plan in an inclusive way. During the process, 323 young people and 17 youth organizations were heard, and 12 joint consultations were held. The Finnish Action Plan on Youth, Peace and Security for 21 to 2024 was adopted in August 21. It includes 5 focus points. The first focus point is involvement, which commits Finland to increase young people's opportunities to have a say and to be heard. The second point is prevention, which means that we commit to developing human rights and democracy education, mediation skills, and media literacy. The third point is partnerships, which commits us to strengthen the role and voice of youth organizations. Such partnerships have led to the 2250 resolution being noticed in Finland's foreign and security policy. young people have a central role in implementing the objectives of the Agenda 2030 as well. The action plan's fourth point is protection. To be active citizens, young people need to be provided with a safe and open society. They need a safe spaces to meet, to speak, and to participate. To achieve this, Finland commits to counter youth marginalization, promote equality and non-discrimination of young people. And the fifth point is disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration, with the aim to support young people's reintegration into society by helping them find jobs, opportunities, and partnerships again. To follow up the implementation of the action plan, we have established a national 22 follow-up group that will meet 3 to 4 times per year. It will draft a midterm review and a final report that will be presented to the Parliament and discussed in the Foreign Affairs Committee. In parallel to this process, a working group has been set up to develop indicators to evaluate and measure the achievements of the action plan. To this day, Finland is the only country in the world to have implemented a national action plan for 2250 resolution. Although we hope for more action plans, we also see this as an opportunity to act as an example and to influence others. The drafting process has generated much international attention, and Finland has been consulted by Nigeria, currently drafting their own plan. Finland has also cooperated with the ICGLR Youth Forum in Africa. Together with Qatar, Colombia, and the UN, we have organized the Doha Youth Symposium in January 22. Finland was represented by several youth organizations at the symposium that agreed on 5-year strategy for youth inclusiveness in peace processes. Young people are our future. Our actions today will determine what that future will look like. Let me finish by encouraging the OSCE to take a more active role in promoting and implementing the objectives of 2250 resolution. Inclusion and equal opportunities are key to maintaining stability and peace. Based on my report in the Council of Europe, the Assembly is currently considering setting up its own youth partner status. Maybe the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly could follow its lead to give a louder voice to the youth. Who knows, they might just hold the keys to a better future for us all. Thank you so much. And unfortunately, I will have to move towards airport, but I try to stay connected.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hope. So indeed, very interesting idea about the youth partnership. And also, I'm sure that all our members appreciate the insights you gave about this very innovative experience of Finland in adopting the National Action Plan on Youth, Peace and Security. We will now move to our next guest speaker, Mr. Simon Linkayer, representing the European Youth Forum. For those of you who don't know, the European Youth Forum is a big platform of youth organizations in Europe, representing more than 100 different organizations, and they bring together more than tens of millions of young people across the region. Mr. Linkayer is very interested in the topics of democratic participation and engaging marginalized young people in electoral politics. His experience is primarily in the liberal youth movements, if I'm correct. And also he used to work as the foreign policy speaker and chairman of the policy committee of Danish liberal youth. Currently, Ms. Linkayer is in the process of his dual master's degree with University of Copenhagen and Stockholm University. Mr. Linkayer, the floor is yours.
I can see I can see we're forgetting to update our biographic information as I graduate from things, but we will happily live with that. That is on our website. Thank you, first of all, Chair, for the lovely introduction and for inviting me and the European Youth Forum to participate here today, as well as, of course, to you, Madam President, and Madam Karimi for putting this very important issue on the agenda. And not least, of course, Madam Rosinska and Madam Hopsu for the very uplifting opening remarks. As was correctly stated, we at the European Youth Forum is the world's biggest platform of independent youth-led youth organizations. We bring together armies of scouts, the European Union of deaf and hard of hearing youth, national youth councils, exchange organizations, faith-based organizations, student organizations, in short, young civil society throughout Europe. And of course, that's a very relevant starting point for me to take in this discussion here today about, well, how can young people contribute to the strengthening of human rights and democratic institutions, and what major obstacles do we face? I think a very logical place to start is let's look at what we know about the situation of young people throughout our continent. The European Youth Forum launched last year, along with a range of partners, including the Social Progress Imperative, the Youth Progress Index, which is a global index of youth-specific indicators for well-being and social progress, as well as civic and political rights. It ranks more than 150 countries throughout the world. And if I can share one, if you forget everything else I say, then remember this one thing I say, which is that the Youth Progress Index provides strong evidence that there is a persistent and strong positive correlation between the civic space, the foundational political rights and participation of young people, and the social progress of young people. So regardless of what moral, political arguments we will otherwise talk about today, and thankfully there are plenty, just remember that engaging young people fundamentally is not only something to do because it is right, it is something to do because it is effective, because it creates better policy and social progress for young people and the society as a whole. And there are many reasons for that. When you engage young people, you add a diversity of voices. Young people face specific obstacles, specific struggles. We're at a specific stage in our lives which requires tailored solutions and approaches. And the best place to find those solutions and approaches is by engaging with young people. It also helps, I believe it was mentioned earlier, that it helps propagate, it helps maintain the values of democratic, pluralistic, open societies that all of us today here share, that when young people are brought into the process as young people, they become a part of a committed, democratically literate, engaged citizenry. And that is key for any democratic society. It's also key because it impacts the long-term planning of policy. Now, of course, in a collection of parliamentarians, I would never accuse politics of occasionally being short-sighted. But if I were to be that rude to the gathering here, I would say that including young people who will be impacted for decades by rising inequality, by climate and environmental change, biodiversity loss, a range of these democratic political issues, then young people and their real impact, their real engagement can help to future-proof the policies we actually have. It's a matter of intergenerational solidarity, and it's a matter of politics which works to the best of societies in the long term. So if we can all agree that these are good things, and hopefully we can, then what are the barriers? I was encouraged by, I believe it was Madam Karimi's remarks, recognizing that young people face specific individual challenges, discrimination simply based on age. But young people are also at increased risk for multiple discrimination. Young people are hit harder by socioeconomic discrimination, by discrimination on the basis of sexual or religious orientation, different ableism considerations as well, because when you're already young, you are approached in democracy with a lessened assumed ability to contribute. You're met with an expectation that you're insufficiently knowledgeable or insufficiently considerate. And these are key problems that are only multiplied as young people also face other kinds of discrimination. Another really key barrier is the lack of transparency, the complexity of public institutions and public decision-making. Young people simply need to be approached in ways of communicating in types of information that are youth-friendly and youth-centered, that allow young people to gain the requisite knowledge for actually engaging in society. And it is the responsibility of any state or any multilateral institution to provide that information, to essentially provide its citizenry, especially its young citizenry, with the tools that we need to adequately engage in these decision-making processes. An independent, strong civic space, an independent, strong civil society can help alleviate many of these concerns, can help improve and create avenues for young people to get engaged. So it's key that young people are included as key stakeholders, but it is just as key to stand firm for the civic rights, freedom of association, freedom of speech for young people, and look at adequate funding for youth civil society and youth organizations. We published in 2020 a study on civic space, which shows alarmingly high numbers of youth organizations fear for government retaliation in their funding or in their legal registration or similar throughout Europe when they engage in the public sphere. And you as politicians have the power to fix that. So how do we then increase young people's participation in these democratic, hopefully inclusive processes? You've got to start with the fundamental premise that it's a right. It's not an option. It's not something to add on to a project. It's not something to write in a folder or take a picture. It is a right of every citizen to engage democratically. And you have to start with the approach that young people have that right, and how can we implement it? These youth participation mechanisms, which are sometimes specially created, I think a best in class example is the Joint Council under the Council of Europe, where young people elected through independent civil society vote along with politicians and decision makers. Because the fundamental premise of all of this is that power is centered at the politicians. Power is centered at you. I believe President Sederfeld in her opening remarks said that the Parliamentary Assembly here can take the lead in including youth contributions and dare to accept the challenge. I think that's a brave and inspiring quote, but returning perhaps to making a joke at the expense of politicians, while you are great at a great many things, you are not always great at sharing power. And bringing young people simply to a table and listening to them and then standing up and going to the grown-ups table and making a decision is not quality youth participation, is not quality youth engagement. You need to be ready to cede real, actual power, share decision-making competence for quality youth participation mechanisms. Of course, we also need young people much more engaged in these fundamental, structural, partisan, political, formal democracy of voting and running for elections. I was encouraged as we were waiting to start this meeting by Senator McPherson's remarks, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong, about a bill to lower the voting age to 16 in Canadian federal elections, because we are, with our standard voting ages of 18, disenfranchising a great many young people who frankly are capable, committed, and willing to engage formally in democracy. So I really hope that we'll take that challenge seriously, that you will all as politicians grab that mantle, both when writing laws, but also importantly in your parties. You have to push and accelerate and engage with young people in your party structures as well, get young candidates on the ballot, create policy with youth interests and youth organizations, and propose legislation and policy that is centered on the needs and interests of young people. But it sounds like from everyone's introductory remarks that this is a forum very much up for the challenge. So I'm tremendously happy to be here today, and I really hope we'll have a great debate. And I am quite worried I've gone over time now, so I will come to a close here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, dear Simon. It was great intervention and very comprehensive overview. From my side, I can also really thank the European Youth Forum for the Youth Progress Index initiative. This is the tool that really helps us to understand situation on regional level, on country level. So thanks a lot. And our last, but of course not least speaker, Ms. Alona Shkrum from Ukraine. She's the member of the parliament. Ms. Shkrum is a lawyer, politician, and human rights advocate. She already has almost 8 years of professional engagement in the parliament as the parliamentarian, and she actively involved in the issues of civil service reform in Ukraine, protection of human rights, gender equality, and many others. Ms. Shkrum, it's a great pleasure to have you here, so the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me well. Thank you so much for letting me join this meeting and for this invitation, for organizing that. I think it's an exceptionally important topic to talk right now and to make solutions of what is going on in the world and in Ukraine. Actually, when you are saying that I've been in the parliament for almost 8 years, it sounds absolutely horrifying to me because the time has moved so fast. And when I came to the parliament, I was one of the youngest members of parliament. I was 27. Right now, I'm actually on the older side because the parliament, which was elected 2 years ago, is one of the youngest in the world. Right now, the Ukrainian parliament is the second youngest in the world. So I'm right now quite old in comparison to a lot of my colleagues, and the average age of our parliament has become younger by almost 8 years, so it is 41 right now. But I have to tell you very honestly that this was not because of any policy making ideas or any documents that we adopted or any specific outreach programs that we had. I think it was because in 2014 we had the Revolution of Dignity, which was led by a lot of civil young activists, NGOs. I myself came to the parliament because I was very active member from the part of an NGO and working also with internally displaced persons, because due to the war we have with Ukraine and annexation of Crimea and occupied territories in Donbass, we in Ukraine have more than 1.7 million internally displaced people, which came, from the occupied territories to the mainland of Ukraine, 1.7 million. And obviously, a lot of them were women, children, and young people. And so we need to get a special help for them, social help, lodging, housing, and a lot of people were working in this area. So I came to the parliament working specifically in this area, and that was something that was done by a lot of young people, NGOs, volunteers all over Ukraine, and even from abroad. Right now, actually. Our parliament has, for the first time in the world, has an incredible quantity of young people that we don't even need a caucus. So in 2014, we actually created a caucus in the parliament to promote more youth involvement in the parliament, and the caucus involved about 35 young people who were the youngest in the parliament and first time ever in the parliament. And I think that this is a good idea to do such caucuses in the parliament of other countries if you don't have enough young people there, because actually we did a lot of internships, a lot of outreach programs, a lot of legislation for the participation of youth, a lot of activities in the regions, and I think it helped. And boosted the interest to politics and civil activity a lot, because I don't think that Ukraine is, I do think that Ukraine is not an exception, that politics was considered something not fun, not popular, not not interesting to do for younger generation. And we had to make politics and politician as a profession much more accessible for the younger generation, but also much more interesting and cool in a way. And I think that we used to do it starting from 2014 with a lot of different helps of NGOs, internships in the parliament, internships in the foreign offices, with this special caucuses in the parliament, with also special rules on how the party can allocate certain spendings to work with the younger generation and to work with young members of their party in the regions, in local communities, etc., etc., etc. We are also right now looking into promoting voting solutions that people can vote online, because younger generation obviously don't want to go to the polling stations, and this is one of the reasons they don't involve themselves in election in Ukraine, because they specifically say that it's a very old system to go to the polling station and vote. So that's why we are working on the law to allow them to vote online, and I think this can also be a big change on how they participate in local elections specifically and in national elections. Right now, 63% of our parliament is younger than 45 years, and almost half of our parliament, I think it's 46%, is younger than 40 years, which on average in the world, we only see 17% of the parliament being younger than 40 years. So it's a big difference. I do think that the crisis we've had in Ukraine, the revolution of dignity, the annexation of Crimea, then the coronavirus, the occupied territories, the tensions that we have right now from the boosted youth participation. So again, to be honest, I cannot say that it was because of our perfect political changes or policy-making attitudes, but it was because the young people became active also very by themselves, starting from the grassroots, starting from the universities, from the parliaments in universities, and being very active from 2014 in the life of their local communities, of their cities, different NGOs, and etc., etc., etc. We were talking, introducing quotas also to the local community, so for the parliament, for the younger generation. But the thing is that we don't need it anymore in Ukraine because it's become so active. But I think it could be a good idea for other colleagues from other countries to think about specific quotas as a deal breaker for a number of years, as we talk about quotas for women participation, for example, and hopefully they will not need it anymore after 1 or 2 elections that will come this way. We are also asking ourselves, why do we need more youth participation? And here I'm very grateful for the previous speakers who said that it's not because it's the right thing to do, or it's because we have so much youth population in the world, but actually because, as we've seen in Ukraine, the policy making changes completely when you introduce a lot of young people and when young people are active. So they start to talk about the things which are completely different from what we've heard in the discussions in years in politics. The politics also becomes more approachable. It is, a funny thing to say, but we right now have the most numbers of members of parliament who use TikTok and Instagram. So the politics becomes something which is very approachable, and you can contact your member of parliament through Instagram or through other means of communication. Of course, it provides, certain risks and certain disadvantages you don't have, enough time to answer. But I think that it has changed a lot the perception of a politician, the perception of somebody in power, the perception of somebody in civil service. Also, introducing more people, active young people to policy making actually provides better solutions. And we've seen that a lot of things that were not talked about on maternity leave, on youth participation in different areas of work, we have found much better solutions, and we've never thought about them until we had so many young people and young generation actively in the parliament and in local communities. So our question is how parliaments can work even more with young people and how can young people participate more. I would say that we right now face a very interesting change in the world. We are in this, we face a lot of changes with the COVID, with the environmental issues, with the security situation, which is going on not only in Ukraine, of course. And I think that young people feel that they can provide better solutions for that, or that certain solutions were never thought about and they were never heard, especially on environmental issues and climate change in Ukraine. I would say it's predominantly the younger generations who pushes for this, well, for this agenda. And we see a lot of new interesting discussions. So I think we see this kind of break point in the world and in the political arena, and hopefully it will move forward, and we will see even more young participation. I'm right now also in New York on the UN session for the parliamentarians, as I am the member of Interparliamentary Union, and I found out it to be very useful that Interparliamentary Union has voted a number of years ago to create a forum for young parliamentarians all over the world. And it was an exceptionally useful thing for me when I came to the parliament 7 years ago. I was faced with discrimination. I was told that, I am a pretty young girl who knows nothing. And yes, I was a lawyer and I was working as a lawyer already for a number of years, but you know nothing about policy making, you know nothing about, tax reform. And please do talk about young participation and social issues, but do not talk about security or taxation reform or, any other important, let's say, subject, because this is something you don't know anything about. And then I came to the IPU, Interparliamentary Union, and I found out that a lot of young people all over the world face the same discrimination and problems in their offices. And the Youth Forum actually helped us to find better solutions, to find better dialogue, to find better advice with our colleagues all over the world. So I do think that those kinds of youth forums are incredibly important for those who already are active and want to have more participation in their communities, but do face certain kind of discriminations, problems, personal stopping points, etc., etc. Also, the mentoring programs are quite well. I never participated in any official mentoring program, but during my years in Interparliamentary Union, I have found a number of mentors who still help me a lot, who face the same problems. And I do provide advice to a lot of women in local communities, in local governments, and in different regions in Ukraine, and not only in Ukraine. So I think the idea that somebody has already gone through the problem and discriminations that you face now could be very, very helpful and could promote more young people to be active. Again, I would say that those kinds of events are exceptionally important, and it's very nice to hear so many colleagues and to hear so many interesting ideas. I've just heard for the first time that the Finnish experience has this action plan for young people and security and peace, and I think this is something that we have to talk about in Ukraine, and we can implement in Ukraine, especially in this time of crisis and high tensions on our border. So I do thank you for inviting me, and I think my official part of the presentation is over. I will be open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Krum. It's indeed very inspiring what you have told us, and also about the role of young people in the challenging times, how young people are ready to take the action and to contribute to a lot of efforts. So thank you very much for this. With this, we conclude our presentations from speakers. And we will start with interventions from our parliamentarians and participants. I would like also to remind you that if you want to ask questions to our speakers or contribute with your own insights, you can do it through the Zoom chat function. And now, with your permission, Madam Karimi, I would like to give the floor to our first speaker, Senator McFedran from Canada. Also would like to thank you for your great efforts. I think it's like 4 a.m. in where you are, so thank you very much for this contribution.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. This is just part of the price tag of being an active member of any European-based organization. Canadians have to be prepared to get up in the middle of the night, and many of us are. I want to thank all of the speakers. It's been a wonderful experience to be here and listen to you. I've already sent a note to President Sederfeld just to say how important it is to have the President making it clear that this is a priority area. And to you, Special Representative Karimi, thank you for your wonderful work. It's like knitting together a whole new quilt and Afghan of connecting through countries and through shared values in the way in which we all treasure democracy. Speaking from Canada, we have a particular attention being paid to our democracy as our Parliament is in the midst of debating our Emergencies Act, which was invoked on Monday of this week. And it is a time for real reflection. And I think one of the issues that is definitely on our agenda is youth engagement in our democracy. I have already mentioned that I sponsor Bill S-201 for lowering the federal voting age in Canada to 16. And I want to acknowledge that there are members of the House of Commons who are also very committed. And we are actually working together as senators and MPs to try to move this issue further on our parliamentary agenda from both sides, from both houses in our parliament. One of the key points I wanted to make was the contrast between what we face in Canada and what we've heard from most of our speakers, identifying the preponderance of youth in your populations. It's actually the exact opposite for us. In 2016, in the National Census for Canada, we became for the very first time an old country. More people over the age of 35 than under the age of 35. And this, of course, is very concerning. And the ways in which parliamentarians can be engaged includes the excellent example from Finland. We have a similar initiative coming out of our Women, Peace and Security National Network to work with younger leaders in focusing on the youth, peace and security agenda as well, and the value of seeing an integration of the Women, Peace and Security suite of resolutions and the Youth, Peace and Security resolutions, and building intergenerational coalitions and communication. We have a lot to learn from young leaders, and frankly, young leaders have something to learn from us as well. So there's an emphasis on this international, intergenerational focus on youth engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker on my list is Mr. Roger Padreni from Andorra. Mr. Padreni is one of the leaders of our informal network of young parliamentarians in the OSCE. So, dear Roger, thank you very much for attending this event. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Manager. First of all, congratulations to Ms. Farah Karimi and the OSCE's International Secretariat for organizing this meeting. Also, congratulations to the speakers for your interesting interventions, different interventions, but all of them interesting. And I think that it's important to listen to different voices from different perspectives, but all of them with the youth perspective. In this sense, with my short intervention, because I don't want to be very long, I want to add a positive point of view of where we are now concretely here in our organization as a member of the OSCE. And it's important to compare it of where we were a year ago at this time. A year ago, we didn't have a special representative here in the OSCE, and now we have, as the ministerial lunch had before, Ms. Farah Karimi. A year ago, we didn't have a space where young representatives could meet. Now we have started to connect each other in the network of young parliamentarians. So are different things that I think it's important to notice that we have changed different structural changes of the organization of the CPA. These two structural changes have been the ones that also from our delegation, from the delegation of Andorra, we have insisted in the several meetings we had last year. We had more than 3-4 meetings around youth topics. So this is also a point to say that before we didn't have, and now we have it. And these two structural changes, the special representative on youth and the creation of this kind of a space of young parliamentarians, I think they are fundamental. They're fundamental in order to coordinate all the topics related to youth and facilitate that youth perspective is heard in the debates we had here in the different committees of the OCPA. As I have been member of the parliamentarian organization of the OSCE from 2019, and from last year to now, I have seen a change. I've seen the first change is now the youth perspective has a voice or is more listening in the OCPA. So small changes, but it's changes that now we have noticed that they are constructing something here in the OCPA that can be positive for the new generations. But what I have said also several times is that these changes are only tools in order to have more participation of young parliamentarians, but also tools in order to open the youth voices of the civil society here in the OCPA. Now, with this debate that we have today, I think it's an example of how the OSCE and the OCPA is opening their organization to the civil society. In this sense, from our delegations, we have also insisted that this change have to facilitate other objectives. For example, we have insisted in order to create an OSCE, so from the ministerial lines, but also an OCPA youth agreement all together. The two branches of the OCPA working also with the civil society. A document that has to add all the priorities of young people of the OSCE region, and a document, as I have said, that has to be created from the youth, by the youth, and for the youth. As before, President Sederfeld, but also Special Representative Karimi have said, nowadays we have started to have meetings in the network of young parliamentarians. And if you are a young parliamentarian under 35, and you are interested in order to participate in this kind of meetings and have your voice heard in this kind of organization, you are more than invited. Now we try to have a meeting next March, and if you are interested, you are invited, and your voice will be heard. And I hope that finally all the work that we will do here in the network of young parliamentarians, we also will be heard in the different committees of the OCPA, because this is the final target, that our voice finally has a result in the different declarations or in the different items that have to be told in the different committees of the OCPA. That's it. This is the only two things that I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Roger. The next speaker on my list is our special representative on civil society engagement, Kyriakos Hajiani from Cyprus. Mr. Hajiani, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear President, Madam Sederfeld, dear Karimi. Thank you very much, and I want to congratulate for this excellent meeting, and also all the speakers and the participants. The active contribution of the young people in democratic processes is essential if we want to be more democratic, inclusive, and participatory societies. However, we must acknowledge that participation in the democratic life is more than just encouraging the youth to go to polls when there are elections or stand up for elections themselves. Although these are also important elements. The disappointment of the youth with politics is unfortunately a strong trend, and their interest needs to be revived. Youth across the OSCE area are a natural element of change and improvement of democracy, human rights, fundamental freedoms, and the rule of law. But at the same time, in many instances, youth remain underrepresented in or totally excluded from formal decision-making processes. If we truly want the youth to contribute to strengthening the rule of law, democracy, and human rights, we must promote active citizenship and ensure that the youth have the means, the space, and the opportunity to influence decision-making processes and participate in actions and activities to contribute to building a better, more democratic society. As a special representative on civil society engagement, I must point out that the involvement of the youth in civil society organizations is a critical factor in enabling their contribution. Participation in youth-led and youth-serving organizations will enable them to acquire the contacts that are needed to exercise their influence effectively, to make their voices heard, and ultimately to expand the democratic space in the OSCE region. At the same time, we must acknowledge that the democratic space continues to shrink in several states across the OSCE area. And the OSCE has a crucial role in supporting the youth movement to strengthen democracy. We must continue to strive for protecting and supporting the youth and advocate for their active engagement across the OSCE region. Additionally, we must do more to combat intimidation or repressions against youth activists that aim at preventing the crucial voice of the youth from speaking out and raising alarm. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hajiani. And the next speaker is Sergey Kandanyan from Armenia.
Good afternoon or good morning, dear participants. Madam President, Madam Special Representative, thank you very much for your efforts and for organizing this meeting. And I'm thankful for all our speakers for their interventions. Like the Ukrainian parliament, Armenian parliament is also very young, and this is sometimes very challenging when it comes to decision making, especially on peace and security issues, but it's also an opportunity for us to look at the things from different angles, from different perspectives, and make decisions. And what I like to speak about is that our speakers speak a lot about the inclusion, young inclusion in decision making and in the processes going on in our OSCE area. I would also like to point out that unfortunately in OSCE area we have young people that are voiceless, and they have no or very few opportunities to voice their interests and ideas. I'm talking about the conflict zone and or gray zones, and from my perspective, of course, I'm talking about young people of Nagorno-Karabakh. Of course, there are other formats for OSCE PA to discuss the political, human, and humanitarian dimensions of the conflicts. But as we are talking about youth inclusion, I would like for us to think of thinking of the mechanism, how we can also make young people from these areas also present and make their voices heard, especially when they have no official or political representation in the formats like OSCE PA or other international organizations. Especially because these are conflict zones, these people have their ideas about the peace and security issues. And it's one thing when we are voicing their ideas, when we are representing their ideas, but another when they speak about their views themselves. So I would like for us to put this also on our agenda of this network, to think of the mechanism, how we can make young people heard in the conflict zones of OSCE area. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. To my knowledge, there are no other speakers in the list. So maybe I can ask once again if anyone would like to comment or ask questions. Seeing none, maybe we would like, there is one? Yes, from President. Yes, Madam President, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Consigliere Sabina. I would also like to say thank you to all the distinguished speakers and all the young people who have taken the voice, and also to Senator Maki Pedran and Kyriakos Hadiani, Special Representative on Civil Society. I think it has been a very interesting and important discussion. You have been pointed, I'm just saying what I have noticed, what I have, those kind of thoughts I have got during this discussion. As I see it, you have raised a lot of very important issues. And I think there is several things to be aware of, several factors. I don't say that we have a plan inside OSCE how to involve more young parliamentarians. Maybe that could be something to think about for a special representative together with the youth platform. How could we do, how could we act to involve more young people? I also listened to I think it was Mr. Roger Pedrani from Andorra who raised the issue of you will hear our voice. I look forward to hear the voice when young delegates in OSCE Parliamentarian, OSCE EPA raise their voice. And I would like to add one thing to this. As a young, not only as a young, but if you want to have impact in a parliamentarian assembly, it's the same as everywhere. Learn to know the rules, how to act. And one way to make more impact is to use the tools we have. When it's the summer meeting, to write supplementary items, to write amendments, because that gives you a certain place where you can speak out, where you can have impact on the decision making. And I think it's so important to work together on this. Very often do we work together in our national delegations or in the different party groups, or just as individual, maybe alone or together with the colleagues. But you can do this as well as a youth group, of course, but you have to do it in the same format as all other MPs and learn the rules, because that's I think this is not a lesson, but it's the way to act. And I think this kind of advice is very important. Otherwise, it's difficult. I do also see one challenge we have inside OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. The delegations are always elected, appointed by the national parliament. And of course, if it's a national parliament with very few young people elected as MP, it's also difficult to be elected. So this shows that the work that you will do in the youth platform as well as in OSCE overall is important to be known around the member countries. So there will be experience, good, best practice, some knowledge to build on, to showing that it's not to involve youth and give youth, young people the position to be elected and be elected to the national parliament. It's not a threat to parliamentaries. It's a contribution. And I think that's a lesson also to learn. And sometimes it's difficult, but it's not to give up. I do also see that there are, for OSCE as a security organization, and we're talking about security, we have the European Security Order with its 3 dimensions. And it shows the importance to also think a little bit outside of the box. Like what's said from the delegate from Armenia about conflict zone, is Mr. Sergey Kandanyan from Armenia, how to work when it's a conflict zone. But I would also like to mention, when I listen to the speaker from Ukraine, I think it was Mizinka also who mentioned that the change with the increased number of MPs happened in Ukraine because of the threat. When there happens something very challenging in a society, it might also have an impact on who will be elected. What have been said from several speakers is the importance of the civil society. And I agree on this. I think that the civil society can foster young people, can also give a network both for the young people and for elderly. And you need, in cooperation, you can build bridges. And this is also a very important thing. And what I have seen in several countries where there are also an impact from young people, it's that the parties have youth organizations, and not youth organizations are put on the side, youth organizations who have an impact on the politics and work on the same, they are taking serious, just as the party organization overall. And I think that's also an aspect that's important to include when talking how to promote young people. And of course, as leader of an organization, it gave me also some thoughts about this. The importance to see and notice young people and appoint young people to important positions. Because without getting the possibility to get the position, it's difficult to be visible and might be difficult to speak out. But let me say one thing. The age is maybe never the right one. Now I sound a bit, just to say that we heard from Aluna Strum from Ukraine. I'm sorry that I mentioned the wrong word. That the average age in Ukraine parliament is 41. In my country, is the average age of a parliamentarian 44. Every year when it's election, there is young people, 18, 25, who are elected, and they do a fantastic job. But we have got a debate about how to involve elderly people. I am 62, and I belong to the 10% of parliamentarians who are below 60 years old. So we have got the debate in Sweden, not about how to involve young people in politics. These days, it's how to involve people who are elderly. And what I mean by this, it's not that young people shouldn't get the space. It shows that it's important to give space to young people, because then they can take part. And also to give young people the possibility to hold important, to be appointed and be elected to leadership. I say this as well because I see that that's also as an important issue. And one more thing I would like to say is to try to find different ways to give the space for young people. One was the civil society to form network and so on, but also it was mentioned by some speakers here about the importance of, for example, mentorship. I have been mentor for young people, and I am very pleased. Some of them have entered parliament and are today my colleagues in parliament. But then it's important to stop to look on them as adapts. They are colleagues. We have the same responsibilities, and they should also have the same possibilities. So there is a lot of issues to think about. But I would say don't wait, because the time will never be the right. It's just to do it, to start and have the courage. So I stop here, and it has been so fantastic to listen to this seminar. And once again, thank you so much, Farah Karimi, and thank you to the network, and thank you to the Secretariat for all the effort you have done to put this event together. It's really a highlight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Very interesting intervention, I would say, and also thank you for raising the topics of intergenerational dialogue. And I know that Madam Karimi is also will have soon the meetings with our special representative on elderly issues, and also discuss these topics, how this dialogue can be established. I know that a couple of our guest speakers already left or need to leave soon. So maybe I can ask those that are still here if you would like to comment on what you've heard during this debate or conclude with some remarks. Maybe I will start with Mr. Linkaya, if
Absolutely.
you have anything to say.
Yes, sure thing. So I've been tremendously inspired and encouraged today by the interventions throughout. I think some especially key points from my perspective, from our perspective in the Youth Forum, from the last couple of interventions, was also this idea of intergenerational cooperation, intergenerational dialogue, and intergenerational policy planning, because it really isn't, I mean, a good democracy isn't about one group of people squashing another. It is about a dialogue and collaboration. So I think being mindful of that aspect and recognizing simply that if we are to have such an intergenerational dialogue, then we really do need specific measures targeted at young people. I was also, of course, very encouraged to hear, I believe it was Mr. Pedrini talking about possibilities for developing policy. And I think the phrase was mentioned with and by young people. And I would just encourage that one then looks around across international institutions where some have already quite good instruments. I've referred already to the Council of Europe's Joint Council. I could refer also to the EU Youth Dialogue under the European Union, which encompasses a very wide-ranging consultation of young people across the EU member states, which are then inputted and treated by national youth dialogues from civil society, along with national and European decision makers, to eventually then become a council resolution. So where young people really are in the process of co-drafting what eventually becomes the decision. Mr. Hajiani mentioned, I think, towards the end of his intervention, the importance of shielding young people and young activists from and youth organizations from the risks of reprisal and threats from well, that could be other actors in society. It could also, especially in the arena of funding, we are quite concerned when we look out across especially Europe and see sometimes tendencies to vilify NGOs, vilify civil society, and treat them as essentially hostile to the polity. We think that it's key that there are legal, institutional, financial safeguards that ensures the actual and practical freedom of speech and association of youth organizations. And I think finally, I would just comment on Mr. Kandanyan, and I'm thoroughly sorry if I've mispronounced everyone's name, and the comments on really voiceless and disenfranchised young people. I would agree that more needs to be done to include young people in conflict areas. I also think that it helps build peace. But I would simply also call, related to that, to the attention that we have other groups of completely marginalized and disenfranchised young people throughout the world. young refugees struggle to access really key basic civil and political rights and liberties. And I would just call that to the attention of the forum. Then when it comes to engaging young people, it really is key to be aware of these causes for multiple discrimination that I mentioned earlier. So once more, tremendously thankful, tremendously encouraged by the debate today, and also by the interventions following the initial speeches. So very hopeful to hear where you go from here with the youth platform and youth relevant work in the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Maybe I'll give the floor to Ms. Maria Rachinska, because I don't really see the others connected. So Ms. Rachinska, if you want to say a couple of words before we close the event.
Thank you very much once again for this webinar. It was really inspiring to me. I would like to thank for the idea about online voting in Ukraine. Specifically, online voting, I'm sure has a lot of advantages, but it also raises some cybersecurity issues. But I think the main point here was that politics have to be more approachable for young people, and it needs to adopt tools that young people use, internet, maybe sometimes different form of the language, more approachable for young people. I would also really thank for raising the topic of youth from conflict zones. I agree it is extremely crucial to think about them, to include them into the discussion. There is a lot of issues around conflicts. It's not only the basic security, even also for refugees, there is a problem of the gap in education, the gap in economic standards that we have to take care about. And I would also thank Madam President for saying that young people need to learn the rules. From my experience, watching also my young colleagues, it is a big obstacle that young people come and actually don't know how to behave in the political environment, how to act. And I agree that it is very crucial to, at the beginning, learn the tools and, as you've mentioned, learn the rules. So thank you very much once again, all of you. It was a pleasure to be here, and it was a good learning experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Maria. I know that Ms. Shkrum probably already left. She had another meeting, and she wrote us a message apologizing for leaving a little bit earlier. And we've heard that Ms. Hopsu was also on her way to the airport, so I'm not sure that she will be able to comment. So maybe I will now give the floor to Farah Karimi, Special Rep on Youth Engagement.
So thank you very much. Thank you all the speakers and also participants for sharing their ideas and their contributions. And also thank you, Margareta, for your very valuable, points that you made hearing the conversation and discussion. So I would like actually a little bit try to summarize the different levels of the conversation that we had. So I hope that I will be able to manage that. I think it is very important to really at least name them, and then also finally to say where we are going as a next step, what we are going to do with this conversation. So I think what I heard, and I think it is very important to keep it in mind, is this interlinkage between this participation of youth and in the topics that we had, human rights, rule of law, and democracy, with general situation of human rights, civic rights in different countries and different areas. So that means that the young people will be more able to participate in these topics if there is also enough space, if the freedom of speech is valued and respected, if freedom of assembly is respected, and democratic values and rule of law are respected. So in that sense, it's very important to integrate the youth perspective in all the different topics that we in OSCE deal with it. I mean, the beauty of OSCE is, of course, these 3 dimensions of security. So, and then bringing this youth perspective in those topics, I think, is very, very important. So that is one point that I wanted to make. The second point is listening to Ukraine and Armenian contributions as the examples that we know from the climate change movement in all of our countries worldwide. Then we see when the young people really face these existential issues. So they are active, they are leaders of movements, they engage. So this is very important that we don't keep, or we don't only listen to young people if it is a crisis. I mean, why? We shouldn't wait for a crisis to engage with young people. So the engagement of young people is important because every topic that we deal with it as politicians affects, of course, their lives and their future lives. So those examples made it again clear to me. So why do we need to really wait till there is a crisis and then see that engagement? We have really to create more space and more possibilities for that engagement. And then I come to the point that I think, Simon, you made on the power sharing. And of course, that's the point. Politics is about power. Power is about shaping actually our public life and our public spaces and our future. So in that sense, that means power sharing from both sides, the awareness and being aware by politicians that you must share that power. But we know that power sharing is never voluntary and never easy. So I know the politicians very well. I am one of them. So in that sense, we really need to emphasize the possibilities of young people to organize themselves, because organizing is the first step to power, actually claiming of the power. So then comes also the connection with the points that Kyriakos made as a special representative on civil society. That's actually NGOs, the civil society, civic space, funding, protecting the activities of civil society organizations, but also inside political parties, the youth organizations of political parties are very, very important in organizing of young people. So is, I think, very important point to take it with us. Then next point that I heard, and I think it is very, very, was very, very valuable point, is actually what the politicians, current politicians who are holding power can and must do. And then Senator McFedran made a good point on the legislation part, what you can do actually with your power as a legislative power, increase the space, because that's it. If you lower the age, then you increase actually the space. Then we have the point of action plan, which was presented by our Finnish colleague. And I saw already that our Ukrainian colleagues said, hey, that's a good idea. So I am going to work on that. So that means also these ideas, we need more, create a platform of maybe exchanging also these ideas and, you know, also support each other in bringing it further in our national parliaments. Then, of course, as a specific situation of OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. I mean, we have, of course, the national parliaments, but we have this parliament. And I think we are making good steps forward, but we are, of course, absolutely not there. So we are just starting. And learning, networking, exchange of best practices, but also creating the space for young parliamentarians to raise their voices. I think these are the first steps that we are taking. And of course, we are learning from IPU forum, from the way that Council of Europe is working. So we are also gathering all these examples and then to see what can we as OSCE Parliamentary Assembly do. And I'm very, very happy that Maria, you are also here, and we had this conversation already. We had the chance last week actually to get to know each other. And I think this is also very important to see what can we do in OSCE as OSCE as organization, but also OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, and how can we actually strengthen the work that we are doing. Agree with everybody who also said that it's very important to pay attention to marginalized young groups, youth in conflict zones, refugees. There's multiple discrimination, so the intersectionality, that's of course very important. And I think this is something that we have to take into account. Now, where we are heading to from here. So this, I think this insights will help us and feed our conversation when we meet with young parliamentarians in March. And then it is also very important to prepare actually our contribution to summer meeting of our Parliamentary Assembly. Most probably we will come up with a suggestion for a resolution. Then we can use all this information and maybe much more contribution from young parliamentarians, I hope, and then move towards our summer meeting. So thank you again. Thank you, everybody. It was very inspirational and very, also, I would say, very fruitful, because we went through really different levels of this topic, and it is not an easy one. And we know that we have to fight for that power sharing. It is not going to happen just automatically by default. We know that. So thank you very much, everybody. And Manucher, we come back to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Karimi. I think this is it for our event. I would like to thank all of our guest speakers for their great contributions and readiness to come and talk and share their ideas and thoughts. I would like also to thank my colleagues here in the Secretariat, Claire Marie and Angelica, for their great support. Without them, this event would never happen. And yeah, we can officially declare this meeting is closed. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.